I'm delighted to be here. That's a powerful question. And there's so many ways to think about it, but I feel like the most resonant for this conversation would be how visionary leadership invites you into a new space of dreaming. Not merely, soft dreaming that is not grounded, but data-driven envisioning of the future. Taking what our heritage, our origin, and history show us, and then merging that to opportunities and, revolutions that are on the landscape, as we can see, not only on the African continent, but across the world. The moment you think about where we're coming from, and you merge that with what we find within global economies, how young people are in the front lines of disruptive innovation, technological advancement, entrepreneurial audacity. And you find that the African young person is stuck in the middle of that because the barriers of distance and, geographical locations have been broken. So if you have access to the internet, you have a sense of where the world is going and what young people are doing. And that starts to shift you into a space of what is called visionary excellence. You start to generate original ideas that you can use to tackle real issues. The reason that is powerful is because the moment you think about all the successes being created by young people at the front lines of education, empowerment, advocacy, governance, policy, etc., and you start to draw those parallels, because we cannot pretend that global economies and the disruptions across industries don't support and contribute to our ability to believe bigger. That is something that is happening. Every African is a global citizen because the barriers of geography have been broken by the power of the internet. So when you take what we have going for us, our own energy, our vibe, our optimism, our creativity as Africans, our resilience, and you merge that with the images of success being created globally, you're going to find young people who now carry a new sense of hope and optimism and will now start to use these tools through research and what we find with, how technology is evolving. And I'm going to nail it somewhere now in case I'm saying a lot. But where I'm going is the miracle with visionary leadership begins with a reawakening about possibilities. And from that point on, we start to ask the important questions around what are the most wicked problems we're faced with on the continent? And how can we take parallels from Singapore, Malaysia, from the United Kingdom, or Germany, to then customize those solutions, give it our own context. And that's exactly what some of our visionary young leaders are doing, including you and I. So that is a first very critical factor in how visionary leadership gets shaped. And the twin sibling is then around mobilization of resources. And we're great at this. We may not even know, but it's a strength of the average African. A young leader of African descent has the ability to rally a troop behind what they believe in. We have the energy, we have the guts, we have the conviction. When those two things come together, where we are ideating original solutions to pressing problems, and we are rallying resources in people, in academic materials, in executive institutional support from the private sector, and in public support from the government, 100% we're going to trigger change, impact markets, and definitely champion possibilities on the continent. Now that is a great question, multi-layered. And there are many things I could be saying because I have spent the last 5 years talking about what I call the rise of the future forward female. But for the purpose of this conversation, I will just center around very quickly 3 things that we find with the average woman of African descent that is going to be a game changer, especially in this decade, in the way that we're able to trigger economic empowerment, multi-layered inclusions for those that are even marginalized, and then open doors of opportunity across various sectors of the economy. The first is around the nurturing spirit. And I know that sounds very almost mushy and soft and emotional, but what we have in the midst of the significant degree of loss of national hope which we face within African countries. That's what JACPA rides on. There's a loss of national optimism and hope, a loss of national pride. But what the average female leader often brings to any context, any conversation, is a nurturing spirit. It's it's an ability to curate a sense of hope and possibilities again, even when we have hit the abyss of despair. That is something you find with female leaders. Think about them within your organizations. Think about them in families. Think about them in religious institutions, even in governments. So I anticipate that female leaders will start to spread hope at a whole different level. And we're going to intentionally tell powerful stories that shape narratives. And this, again, is something that I know we've said a lot, and we think it's primarily a matter of the media. It's not primarily a matter of the media. It's primarily a matter of stories that we tell ourselves till we believe in them. And an average woman is a powerful propeller of preferred narratives. That's the first thing that I see. The second thing that I see is it will surprise you that the McKinsey report on entrepreneurial activity on the continent in the last 7 years continues to show that women are demonstrating greater entrepreneurial audacity. They may struggle with longevity because of sometimes the issues around being facilitators of livelihood. And we don't even talk about that enough, how in the last decade, women's roles in homes have really shifted, and there are more women who are breadwinners and economic facilitators of opportunities in their families. And so we may find that these female entrepreneurs don't keep the businesses beyond the 5th year mark, etc., but there is documented evidence that female entrepreneurs are demonstrating more audacity. They're breaking barriers, entering markets, creating ingenious solutions, earning across currencies, and just going out there and doing great work. So we expect that if support increases, enabling environments, investments, significant education, and communities that catalyze that entrepreneurial energy, we anticipate that in the course of the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see direct connections between female entrepreneurship and economic development and advancement on the continent. The third and final I would also love to center on is how we're seeing women stand at the intersection of civil society and government. Civil society a lot more. Think about the distribution of gender players between men and women in NGOs in Nigeria. Isn't it easily known that it's the women? And we have this data not only locally within our country, but across the continent. Women are holding about between 65 and 73% of the constitution of key players and decision makers in the civil society. What you have to reckon about the civil society is that they are augmenting significantly the inefficient government on the continent, so that education is still decent and meaningful, that sexual violence is being curbed and rape rates are going down, and girls are getting their voice heard. All those public good that we see existing and being fast-tracked to citizens are really happening in the civil societies. It's NGOs that are closing these gaps of inefficient governance and leadership. So we anticipate that with more support, and very importantly, with sufficient education and training, and my organization is actively working on that, would have more women who are going to increase their impact, shape more development outcomes through civil society. How can we amplify their voice? Just one thing for me. So much good work is already going on. Stories are getting told. There's a lot of women empowerment, almost to the point of escalating a patriarchal disadvantage, right? So I know that a lot of empowerment stuff are going on. What I am keen to see that I believe can significantly amplify the impact, the voice, and the leadership of women is to create connection points between leading women in specific fields of play with those who are coming behind. We talk a lot about mentorship, but the gaps are still so enormous. And mentorship has to stop being about a younger person chasing an older person. The generation ahead of us who have accomplished, whether in the public sector, private sector, academia, civil society, wherever, even in religious institutions, have to start to create platforms where they can teach what they have known, so we're not repeating their mistakes and we're getting ahead way faster. That is a great question. It's a question that could get me emotional, but today is not that day because it's a question I ask a lot. I feel like my greatest assignment, mandate, and legacy work is very connected to Africa and enthroning her in the league of the most powerful global economies in the world. Where do I see Africa? There are many things I could be highlighting, but the first for me would be around its human capital. I cannot stop being so truly saddened every time I see the Human Capital Index by the World Economic Forum putting us in the lowest percentile, calling us intellectually impoverished and having unemployable and unemployed people contributing to making us the poverty capital of the world. Those are things that confuse me sometimes because I recognize the power of the African youth, our bustling talent, our extreme innovation and creativity, and how we have survived and thrived in the hardest, contexts. But it's still something that holds a lot of water because raw talent that is unprocessed cannot trigger industrial transformation. And we have so many people who are making it and just trudging on because they have resilience, they have an unbreakable spirit, but their results cannot be coordinated into something that can be scaled. And that's why you have entrepreneurs who can make money for themselves, but cannot build an economic powerhouse for their country. And so many micro, small, medium-scale enterprises never go on to something substantial or generational because we don't know how to harness human capital and really bring out the collective genius in our people. So when I think about the Africa of my dreams emerging in the course of another decade, I really see fine-tuned human capital that is dexterous, energetic, creative, and triggers very radical degrees of transformation. A second thing that I 100% see is that corruption will become archaic. Just like shrines look like things in folklores, that a time will come on the continent and you won't be able to associate with the concept of corruption because of how cleaned out our systems and institutions as well as leadership will be. Finally, I see an Africa that becomes the most desirable continent to live and will become a place where you have people from all over the world come in to really see the gold that we have, and the brain drain becomes a brain gain. I'm looking forward to the exodus back home, and it will be to advantage that our finest minds who have gone to understudy systems that work can come back home to replicate that for us. What can we do to contribute to that? The first is academic rigor. I must say that I'm terribly concerned about this new wave of doctors without any doctoral engagement who just have a certain university in Cotonou, and if you pay $3,500, you become a doctor. It is sick, it's unsafe, and it's just going to contribute to the rot that already exists in our educational system. So I am advocating for academic rigor because our problems are hydra-headed, they are wicked, and they require multi-level engagements that will come from the most brilliant minds. That is where I would stop because I've said a lot already, but we want academic rigor. It's going to make a difference, and you can't stay with raw talent. You have to process it into genius.